In the frostbitten stillness of a small Oregon town, a single unanswered text turned a quiet December afternoon into a living nightmare. When police knocked on Marissa Langley's door, they expected a simple welfare check, just a young mother who'd missed work and forgotten to call in. But behind that locked door lay secrets no one was ready to find. A brutal crime, a vanished child, and a man whose every word tangled the truth deeper in shadows. This is a haunting story of Willow Creek's missing mother and child, a mystery that still echoes through cold nights and unanswered prayers. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there still holds a key to bringing Sophia Langley home. The first Tuesday of December dawned cold and gray over Willow Creek, a speck of a town tucked in Oregon's evergreen arms. Children bundled in puffy coats clutched their parents' hands as they trudged toward Willow Creek daycare, the hum of holiday songs barely masking the winter's bite. Inside the warm yellow building, Ruth Simmons sipped stale coffee and tried not to stare at the clock. It was already 9:30. Marissa Langley was never late. Marissa had been Ruth's lead teacher for almost 3 years, dependable to a fault. When flu season gutted the staff, Marissa worked double shifts. When Ruth's own father fell ill, Marissa had run the entire center for 2 weeks without so much as a complaint. Parents trusted her with their babies. Kids adored her. To see her parking spot empty now felt like an omen no one wanted to name. At 10, Ruth texted Marissa again, "Everything okay? Do you need a ride?" No response. She called next, straight to voicemail. The day wore on. Noon passed. Ruth tried again, her messages stacking up unanswered. "Hey, you're scaring me now. Please text." Still nothing. Ruth found herself replaying the last conversation they'd had before Thanksgiving break. Marissa had been cheerful but tired. She'd mentioned how Sophia, her bright-eyed 2-year-old daughter, had caught a cold but was on the mend. She'd laughed about her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Brandon Ortiz, how he promised to fix her leaky sink, but spent the whole weekend binge-watching old horror movies instead. At 1 p.m., Ruth gave up pretending this was just an innocent mix-up. She called the Willow Creek Sheriff's Office and asked for a welfare check. Marissa's apartment sat above an old converted barn at the edge of Maple Street. Ruth drove over herself, heart pounding against the steering wheel. The deputies arrived minutes later, 2 young officers more accustomed to handling rowdy teenagers than disappearances. They found Marissa's black Honda Civic parked where she always left it. The bay window above the barn's big sliding door was cracked open, letting out a stream of warm air into the icy wind. They knocked and knocked. No answer. Ruth called out Marissa's name, her voice echoing across the empty yard. There was no barking dog, no crying baby, nothing but the rustle of dried leaves scraping the frozen ground. The deputies peered through the window. They saw the neat living room, a battered couch, a small TV flickering static, a pile of children's books stacked by a rocking chair. Nothing looked out of place, except for Marissa's silence. One deputy tried the back door. Locked. No broken windows, no forced entry. After 20 minutes, they turned to Ruth, who stood shivering beside Marissa's Civic, her hands trembling. "There's no sign of a struggle, ma'am," one of the deputies said gently. "Maybe she's just out. Maybe she and the baby stayed with friend." But Ruth felt the chill in her bones had nothing to do with the wind. She looked at the Civic. The car seat strapped in the back, the baby blanket folded neatly on the passenger seat. Marissa never leaves without Sophia's things, she thought, as the deputies drove away, promising to check back if needed. Ruth stared up at that cracked window, wondering what secrets waited in the shadows behind the drawn curtains. Inside the apartment, the scented candles burned on a cluttered kitchen counter. Their sweet fragrance mixed uneasily with something else, a hint of iron, sharp and sour. And in the silence above Willow Creek, a mother and child were already slipping from the world's sight. Detective Lila Moreno had seen enough to know when something didn't add up. She joined the Willow Creek police straight out of college, driven by a stubborn heart and a nose for people's worst secrets. By the time Ruth Simmons called her directly that December afternoon, Lila was already glancing over Marissa Langley's work files, half listening to dispatch update her on the half-hearted welfare check. When Ruth's trembling voice cracked through the line, Something's wrong. I know it. She would never leave Sophia like this. Lila slipped on her coat and headed for the barn apartment herself. She called Marissa's brother, Henry, first. He answered on the second ring, his voice sleep-heavy but quick to panic. Marissa? God, no, I haven't heard from her. She never called for help. Wait, is Sophia okay? When Henry explained that Marissa and Sophia lived alone, except for Brandon Ortiz, her on-again, off-again headache of a boyfriend, Lila jotted the name down fast. Henry described Brandon as moody, sometimes sweet, sometimes manipulative. He's not dangerous, Henry said quickly, but he's selfish, always wants to be in control. They break up every month. Lila hung up and dialed Brandon's cell. A man's groggy voice answered. Yeah? Who's this? She introduced herself. Silence crackled on the line. Brandon, I'm following up on Marissa Langley, she said calmly. Have you spoken to her today? He cleared his throat. She could hear TV noise in the background. Yeah, we talked. She said she was going to work. Took Sophia with her. She's probably with her mom. Her mom lives in Montana, Brandon, Lila said softly. That's not a quick drive. A beat of silence. Look, I don't know. She left early. I'm tired. Can I go? Where are you now? A buddy's place. Eddie's. Last name? A pause. A cough. Gonzalez. Address? Another pause. Shuffling noises. I don't know his exact address. You'd have to ask him. Lila's eyes narrowed. She clicked her pen shut. Brandon, do you know if Marissa's car is still at her place? She doesn't even have a car, Brandon said flatly. Lila's patience snapped like brittle wood. She bought a black Honda Civic a week ago. She showed it to half the daycare staff. So either you didn't know, or you're lying. Which is it? More silence. Then a click. The line went dead. Lila stared at her phone. She could already see the pattern. In her years on the force, liars weren't always killers, but killers were almost always liars. She called dispatch again. We're doing another welfare check. And this time we're going inside. Outside, snow flurries drifted through the pines like lost feathers. In the gathering dusk, Willow Creek looked almost peaceful, but in her gut, Lila knew better. Behind the barn's locked door, the truth was waiting, and it smelled of blood and betrayal. Detective Moreno returned the next morning with 2 deputies, a crowbar, and a quiet promise to Ruth Simmons that she'd find out exactly what had happened to Marissa Langley. The barn's heavy wooden door groaned when they forced it open. Cold air spilled out. The inside smelled too sweet. Cinnamon candles flickering on the counter, masking something rotting underneath. Lila's boots crunched on spilled cereal near Sophia's high chair. A child's sippy cup sat half full of juice, gone sour overnight. They stepped deeper in. Marissa's purse lay dumped out on the couch. Wallet, keys, and cell phone splayed like discarded evidence. Toys were scattered on the carpet, tiny plastic animals arranged as if a toddler had frozen mid-play. Lila's eyes tracked the chaos to the hallway. She didn't want to see what waited at the end, but her feet carried her forward. The bathroom door was shut. She pushed it open. The smell hit her first. Metallic, thick. It coiled into her nostrils, made her stomach tighten. Marissa was there, crumpled in the tub, bruises flowering across her pale skin, dark hair soaked and clinging to the porcelain like seaweed in a titterpool. Lila swallowed bile. She turned to the tiny bedroom next. Sophia's room. There, the rocking chair swayed slightly, as if someone had left it mid-rock. A tiny pink sneaker sat by the crib, its mate missing. A baby blanket spattered with something dark was balled up in the corner. She called in the forensics team. Within an hour, crime scene tape fluttered like yellow ribbon in the cold breeze outside. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains as news spread. A mother dead, a baby missing. As Lila stepped outside, snow began falling harder. She could feel the weight of Sophia's absence settling on her shoulders like the accumulating frost. Somewhere in the swirling white, a child's laugh might still echo, but here, only the silence of a mother who would never speak again. The next 24 hours blurred into questions, phone calls, dead ends. Lila didn't sleep. She replayed Brandon's fumbling excuses over and over in her head. Her gut screamed, "He knows." She brought him in for questioning. Brandon slouched in the cold metal chair, tugging at the sleeves of his hoodie. His eyes darted from her to the door and back. "Tell me where you were Friday night," Lila said, voice flat. The recorder whirred on the table. Brandon shrugged. "I told you. Eddie's house. You got that address yet?" He scratched his jaw. "No." She leaned forward. "Your neighbor saw your car parked outside Marissa's place. The same night. So were you at Eddie's? Or outside the barn?" He stared at the table. "I FaceTimed her. That's what you heard. Maybe they got it wrong." "You FaceTimed from inside the apartment, Brandon." Silence. A muscle ticked in his cheek. She pressed harder. "Why did you lie about her car?" He looked up, eyes suddenly sharp. "She was planning to leave me," he spat. "She bought that car to run off. Said she was going to take Sophia and disappear, like I don't exist." "Disappear from what, Brandon?" He shoved back in his chair. "You don't know her like I do." Outside the interrogation room, Lila's team pulled CCTV footage from half a dozen gas stations. At 2 a.m. the night Marissa died, Brandon's blue hatchback was seen drifting down Maple Street. Marissa's Civic, too, following close behind. Forensics found blood in Brandon's trunk, on his sneakers, a smear on the passenger door handle, each clue wrapped tighter around his neck. But the puzzle center, Sophia, stayed missing. Lila caught Brandon's eyes one last time that night. "Where's your daughter?" she asked quietly. He turned away, pressing his lips together so tight they paled. He never answered. The break Lila needed came at 3 a.m. on her third sleepless night. Dispatch pinged her with an odd match, a dropped 911 call. It had come from Brandon's number at 2:03 a.m. the night Marissa died. She played the audio on her laptop in her dim office. A woman's voice, Marissa's, she felt sure, saying, "Stop. Who are you calling?" Then muffled thuds. Then nothing. She slammed her hand on the desk. If only they'd traced it faster. Maybe Sophia would still be here, curled in her crib, safe in her mother's arms. 2 days later, a charity worker at St. Mary's Church bent to unload donations from a bin behind the building. Inside a black trash bag were bloodied towels, torn baby clothes, a tiny sneaker, the match to the one Lila had found by the crib. Forensics confirmed the blood was Marissa's, but Sophia's DNA was absent. No hair strands, no spit on a pacifier, nothing. It was like she'd vanished into the winter night. The town spiraled into rumor and grief. Candlelight vigils glowed on Maple Street. Flyers with Sophia's round-cheeked grin flapped on telephone poles. Mothers clutched their own children tighter. And through it all, Brandon sat in jail, eyes empty, lips sealed. By spring 2025, the courthouse overflowed with reporters and curious locals. They wanted to see the man who killed Marissa Langley and hear what he'd say about Sophia. Brandon Ortiz pleaded not guilty. His lawyer spun wild tales. Brandon was hallucinating, high on PCP, tricked by masked intruders. But CCTV DNA and that muffled 911 plea tore holes in every lie. Marissa's brother Henry sat front row each day, clutching a photo of Sophia. Ruth Simmons testified about the empty classroom, the child who never came back. Lila laid out the timeline, the lies, the evidence dumped behind the church, the twisted web that always led back to Brandon. But no matter how tight the prosecution's net, there was still that empty space at the center. Where was Sophia? The jury convicted Brandon for Marissa's murder, tampering with evidence, obstruction, but not kidnapping, not child murder. Without a body, the law couldn't close that door. Brandon stared at the floor as the verdict was read, jaw tight, eyes dead. He'd sealed his silence somewhere deep inside, locked it behind bars only he could open. Years have passed in Willow Creek. The barn apartment stands empty, its door forever locked behind yellow tape, and a padlock no one bothers to check anymore. Snow falls heavier each winter, muffling the memories of that December day. Henry Langley still sets an extra plate for Sophia each Thanksgiving. Ruth Simmons keeps a photo of Marissa taped to her desk, a promise that the daycare's heart still beats for the woman who once filled it with warmth and lullabies. Detective Lila Moreno still wakes sometimes to the echo of that 911 call. Stop. Who are you calling? A ghost that never answers back. Brandon Ortiz rots in prison. His appeals fail, one after another. He writes no letters. He makes no phone calls. He never mentions Sophia's name. In Willow Creek, hope has turned to folklore. Some say Sophia's out there, maybe raised by strangers, maybe left in a place too remote for the search dogs to find. Maybe she's alive. Maybe she never stood a chance. But every so often, someone claims to see a little girl with Marissa's deep brown eyes in a gas station in Idaho or a playground in Washington state. The calls come in tips, rumors, flickers of hope. Lila always picks up. She follows every lead, because that's what you do when the shadows of Willow Creek refuse to rest. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere out there, Sophia Langley is waiting to come home. Years have passed since that icy December when Marissa Langley's light was stolen, and her baby girl slipped through the cracks of Willow Creek's darkest secrets. Brandon Ortiz is behind bars, but the question that matters most remains unanswered. Where's Sophia? If you know anything, if you've heard a whisper, seen a child who might be her, don't let silence win. Call the Willow Creek police tip line. Hold your loved ones close tonight. And remember, sometimes the truth hides in the places we fear to look. Stay watchful, stay kind, and never stop searching for those who can't find their way home. If you're captivated by real-life mysteries and chilling crime stories, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. There's so much more to uncover, and you won't want to miss a single case.